Mr. President, I rise today for one simple reason. That reason is to tell this body to stop pointing fingers and start writing a budget that works for not only my state, but every state in the Union. It can be done. It's been done many, many, many times before. Unfortunately, this year, our budget ran out on September 30th. We had a CR that took us from the next day, October 1st to December 8th. And then when December 8th rolled around, we had another continuing resolution, CR, to take us from December 8th to December 22nd. And then when December 22nd rolled around, we had another CR that took us from December 22nd to January 19th, and that's where we are today, because some of us said enough is enough. We need to have a budget that works for this country. Here we are on day 2 of the government shutdown, and this body can't even agree to pay our troops. That's how dysfunctional we have become. Now we're using military men and women as political pawns because of the dysfunction we have here in Washington, D.C. In the past, we've always taken care of these folks because their service members and their families have sacrificed much for this country. But we continue to draw it out by the leadership of this body for political gain. The folks I talk to, the rank and file folks, think it's ridiculous, both sides of the aisle. And they think it's ridiculous that we've gotten here in the first place. But the truth is if we're going to give predictability and the ability for our agencies to plan, and the military to plan, and the VA to plan, and our border security folks to plan, and everybody else, we need to have a budget that goes longer than a month to month or 3 weeks to 3 weeks. We need a budget that funds more than just CHIP. And it's interesting that CHIP, that could have been reauthorized months ago, I did events in Montana talking about how important this was months ago. I'm co-sponsoring a bill that is set on the leader's desk that could have been passed months ago, but it was put in, I guess, as a sweetener, but unfortunately using CHIP as a political pawn isn't exactly what I had in mind for the program, a program that's been around for nearly 20 years and served Montana's families so very, very well. But that's not the only program that we haven't funded. We haven't funded our community health centers. I heard the senator from Alaska talk yesterday about how critically important they are for Alaska. Well, they're critically important for Montana. I got a notion they're critically important for every rural state in the Union and probably every urban state too, as far as that goes. That needs to be taken care of. In Montana, where we have just over 1 million people, 100,000 people depend on community health care for their community health centers for their health care. Then there's a thing called 340B, not to get in the weeds too far, but these are payments given to hospitals that hold pharmaceutical companies accountable and keep our hospitals open. I had hospital administrators and former hospital administrators in my office over the last month telling me if this doesn't get fixed, we're going to lose hospitals in Montana. Once again, taking away access from regular folks. That's not included in any of this and could have been done months ago. There's been plenty of folks come to the floor and talk about opioids, talk about pensions. Neither of those are included in this. There's no money for the borders. Southern border needs some attention. Northern border does too, particularly the ports. There's no predictability for our military. Defense Secretary Mattis has said that many, many times. Things that are closer to home, like rural ambulance services, needs to be addressed, isn't addressed, and isn't going to be addressed unless we push the envelope and get work to get things done here. Teaching health centers that Allow us to have doctors in places around this country that can't get doctors. Critically important. Full Medicare coverage for physical therapists and occupational therapists. We're going to lose these folks if we don't have it. Special diabetes program, particularly for Indian country, where diabetes is rampant, needs to be addressed. Plus a whole lot more. When I was in high school, I debated for a couple years. And one of the things that was interesting during a debate, because you go through a debate and you'd hear the affirmative and the negative lay out their cases, much in the same way as being done by the two leaders here on this issue. And when you got done debating, if one team was particularly behind or ahead, they would say, well, they didn't make a case on why this is a good idea. Or they didn't make a case, and the negative did not make a case on why their case should stand over the affirmative. And I hear the same thing today. When folks come to the floor and say, people agree with everything that's in this. Well, I don't, because there ain't much in this. We've been coming here for the last 4 months since the budget ran out the end of September and continue to kick the can down the road. It's just how dysfunctional this body has become. We can't do the basic thing that we were elected to do, and that's pass a budget to the end of the year and have it include the things that are so important to this country, whether it be military or whether it be health care, whether it be issues that revolve around Medicare, whether it be issues that revolve around pensions. We just don't do much. And I think many of us are getting very tired of saying, you know what, we don't want to put forth any excellence in this body. We don't want to put forth any vision or any leadership. We're just going to do the bare minimum every day. We need to stop. Congress needs to stop with short-term solutions going from crisis to crisis. That is no way to run a nation, and I would tell you that most folks on both sides of the aisle would agree. That's why we need to start working together to get this problem fixed, because it's a problem. The problem of 3-week or 4-week CRs, the problem of not addressing the issues that are so critically important to working families and businesses in this country need to stop. We need to work together. I said yesterday we're being pulled apart by the far left and the far right, and that's the truth. In days gone past, in Mike Mansfield's day, 70% of the work got done in the middle. Now we don't even do the basic of work today. So I would say, let's get together. The truth is the Republicans control the White House, they control the House, they control the Senate, they control the agenda. And they should. They won the last election. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't work together as Democrats and Republicans, and most importantly as Americans, to do what's right by this country. So I would just ask that, particularly the leaders on both sides, get together, do the tough negotiations, compromise, and come up with a budget that works for not only Montana, but for every state in this great country. Mr. President, I yield the floor.